What today would you say are the biggest barriers to having healthy skin? Healthy, attractive, youthful skin.
Oh man,
I mean, you mentioned UV rays, like
Yeah, yeah.
excessive UV rays.
Yeah,
That often comes up.
it's a good question, man. There's a lot of noise in everything we do now. There's a lot of like noise, misinformation. Like we've lost sight of big pictures of things, and we've honed in on things that make it like a 1% improvement, and have forgotten 99% of it. And this applies not just to skin, but to health in general. You know, we've come from a country where being outside and working and eating, normal farm to table foods was okay, to a society where, my collective specialty will say, stay out of the sun. The sun's going to kill you, but take this pill to replace the vitamin D that you needed. Take this pill to replace this that you should have had from your diet. I think the noise is a problem. To a certain extent, your skin is genetically defined. If your family history had a lot of cystic acne, you're probably going to have cystic acne. If you had a strong family history of skin cancer, you're probably at high risk. But we spend so much time looking for the miracle pill or the miracle cream, and then you take a step back and look, and you're like, well, you're not eating great. You're not sleeping great. You're not getting outside. You're not exercising. Well, those easy adjustments are often overlooked. So I think society's noise is one big consequence in terms of having good skin. There's so much information out there. You go onto, Instagram, TikTok, any website, and you'll find 50,000 ways to treat the same skin condition. I don't know if that's the right thing to do.
Does diet have an impact on skin?
100%. And that's overlooked in almost every residency specialty and almost every training program in the United States. There's some that are, forward thinking. I trained up at Stanford, and they were very forward thinking in that there is absolutely a connection between the gut and the skin. The immune system in the gut and the immune system in the skin dictate a lot of the inflammatory processes in the body. So we know from things like eczema, from psoriasis, you can improve and control disease by just modulating your diet. And the most common diet that I have people start on is an anti-inflammatory diet. And it doesn't have to be any specific one. There's a whole slew of anti-inflammatory diets online. You can kind of figure out which one works with your body, but we know that you can get almost a 50% improvement in mild skin disease just by diet change.
Wow.
Acne, like we see this commonly in acne. Young kids come in with acne, and you ask them what they're doing. They're staying up all night. They're having 2 liters of Coke. It's finals time. They're stressed out. They're having a Hershey bar, and then they're like, dude, my skin's breaking out. Well, sugar will drive your acne. We know this very well. And it used to be a misconception that dairy drove acne, but it's actually not the case. We found that in a really cool study that came out of Penn State, non-fat dairy products drove acne, but full-fat dairy products didn't. So when we looked into that, in the United States, a lot of manufacturers put certain emulsifiers to give the mouthfeel for non-fat dairy products to feel like full fat. Those emulsifiers are basically sugar derivatives. So they have the same insulin effect that if you had sugar. So we found that the non-fat dairy products were what spiked patients' acne, but full fat didn't. So it goes back to sugar again for acne. So if you cut out excess sugar, you cut out non-fat dairy products, you get about a 20 to 25% improvement in your acne. Does that mean you can cure your acne? Probably not. If you have mild, maybe. You can definitely improve the severity, and that saves you from another medicine that you need. And here's a medicine guy telling you don't need medicine, blasphemy. But yeah, dude, diet's huge. Diet's huge. The skin-gut connection, we're only now understanding. Like the amount of inflammation, the amount of things that are happening in the gut is mirrored in the skin. And the skin's really cool because it's the first organ you can see. Like, it's really hard for me to look at you and say, hey man, I think your liver's like not doing okay, until it's like too late. Or like, hey, your colon's not, digesting this. But you can see it in your skin. You can see it in the effects of, how your skin disease is doing. If you're looking sluggish, we talk about this all the time. There's a look when people are ill, right? But there's a reason your body looks like that. You can right away, if you see somebody and they look like this certain paleness, gauntness, hollowing around the eyes, they're ill without even having a lab test. You have no idea about them, but they don't look good. And that's your body's ability of saying, hey, there's, excuse my French, there's shit going on inside, and I'm going to show you this way.
There are my understanding is that there are at least a handful of signs visible on the skin that you're eating, we'll say or a pro-inflammatory diet, or maybe the signs that you have hyperinsulinemia, insulin resistance.
100%.
Skin tags comes to mind.
100%. Yeah.
Also, people with type 2 diabetes, don't they have dark?
Yeah.
So
And that's like from years of badness. So we see like this velvety brown discoloration start to occur around the neck, around under the arms and skin folds when patients are basically pre-diabetic or diabetic. The constant insulin drive stimulates the skin to overproduce skin, essentially. We call it acanthosis nigricans, which is not a nice Latin name, but now that I think about it, but
it's a mouthful.
Yeah. There's skin tags, growth that shouldn't be there. Everything is driven by insulin and IGF-1, which is a pro-growth hormone factor. Eczema, patients who don't normally have rashes, when they have a high insulin spike or they're eating pro-inflammatory foods, think Western diet, white breads, white starches, processed carbohydrates, kind of yellow-brown foods. If you think about uniformly yellow-brown foods, they have rashes that show up that normally won't be there. We collectively pile them under the eczema or atopic dermatitis pile, but even in people without childhood eczema can develop this when they have a really poor diet, and it's like the perfect storm. Your gut's not happy, the inflammation spills over, and the easiest place to manifest is the skin.
There was a case report recently that was published, kind of made waves on social media, went a bit viral, of somebody who was on like a crazy iteration of a carnivore diet. He was eating blocks and blocks of cheese every day. Did you see this?
Yeah, hands.
And he had like these yellow lesions like in his hand. What was that about?
Eruptive xanthomas or tendinous xanthomas or xanthelasma. Normally, these aren't associated with high triglycerides, meaning high fat in the blood. And people often mistake these two things in diet. Cholesterol and triglycerides are not the same. And ironically, cholesterol is generally not food driven. So people who have high cholesterol, it's usually genetically defined, their body's producing. Whereas high triglycerides, for the most part, can be modulated by diet. So if you eat too much fat, essentially when your blood type becomes butter, it spills over into the skin, and we see it's essentially fat that's oozing into the skin. And commonly we see this in areas like the upper eyelids, lower eyelids. Actually operated on a lady yesterday to remove them, and her labs are normal, so hers were genetic. And about 80% of the people who have this have normal lipids, but in 20%, you find that, hey, their body's way out of whack. So the carnivore diet, just like anything that's extreme, like extreme one way or another, is probably not a good idea. We're not meant to do that. But the amount that guy was eating, I'm surprised he didn't have any other manifestations besides that. The first thing you'd probably see is like just pancreatitis. It was wild. And that usually is permanent.
Permanent?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. The body won't generally reverse it once it's in the skin.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
So eating like an excessive amount of dietary fat, as this guy was from the case report, like that can definitely drive your triglycerides up. But triglycerides, despite being fat in the blood, can also be driven up by excess carbohydrate intake.
100%. Yeah, for sure. My point in the triglyceride versus cholesterol, people often mistake the two, and they're not. And triglycerides can very well be diet modulated, whereas cholesterol is a little bit harder to modulate diet-wise. And when we see patients with certain skin findings, we always look for internal sources of their cause. What you brought up, which are called xanthomas, eruptive xanthomas, we always get blood tests to make sure, hey, we're not missing something internally. Get a dietary intake. Hey, what's your diet? What are you doing? There's a lot of things that we look for internally and diet-based when we just examine the skin.
Hey, if you liked that video, you need to check out this one here, and I'll see you there.